Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Cordero. I'm a CFA charter holder and an investment professional in the industry. So, when I wanted to become a CFA charter holder, I was debating whether I should get a MBA or go and pursue the CFA program. And there was a lot of back and forth on which one to decide, and it is a really tough decision. So, hopefully, with this video, I can help compare and contrast the two. And I decided to pick the Harvard program since Harvard is kind of one of the Ivy League schools. It's a household name, and everyone knows Harvard. So I'm going to timestamp the different sections in the video. So feel free to skip wherever you want to whatever is most relevant to you and whatever you're most interested in finding out. So let's dive in. First thing, when we're looking at the Harvard MBA versus the CFA charter holder, it makes sense to compare cost, right? Cost is a very important factor. So this is Harvard's website showing that most students actually receive some sort of financial aid, as we can see. So it says 50% are receiving a needs-based scholarship, and they are saying the average scholarship is a $42,000 award. Well, that's great. Now, if we go to this page, though, on Harvard, we can see that it's saying awards are ranging from 2,500 to 76,000 a year. So that is a huge discrepancy. There's a huge variance there for what people might actually receive for scholarship funds, because on the previous page we're seeing, oh, this average of 40,000, but you may be a student that only receives $2,500 a year. Now, how much is that actual cost? So if we look, this shows the annual cost of attendance, and it breaks it down to basically being 115,000. That's a year, folks. So that is 1 year. And we see on this chart, it breaks down the areas of how that breaks out for the year. So we can see it's 115,000 for a single person, and that includes some housing and food and transportation. But really, this tuition is $75,000 a year, which, if you assume a 2-year program, that means you're paying about $150,000. Wow. So, and in 2023, 2024, we're seeing this even go up even further. You gotta love inflation. So we're looking at $160,000 in tuition for a Harvard degree, and you might get half of that with financial aid, or you might have as much as or as little as $5,000 in assistance. So get ready for student loans. So how does that stack up compared to the CFA designation? So this is the CFA Institute website, and there's 3 levels, so you'll have to pay for the 3 various levels. And we can see here the cost is $1,200 if you register basically after May 11th through August 8th. But if you register early, you can get it for as little as $900, which is really quite cost competitive if you think about it. And then there's a one-time enrollment fee for joining the CFA program, which is $350. So you never pay for it again. That's it. You pay for it the first time, and then you'll never pay for it again. And remember, this is per exam. So it's $900 on level 1, and then $900 on level 2. And level 3, I want to say, is right around that $900 mark too. So we can see, so this is level 1 and 2. So level 3 is $940 or $1,250. So you're looking at $2,700 to $3,600 essentially, or $3,700. So if we average that, about $3,200, which compared to 150,000, much cheaper, right? And when you register for the CFA program, remember you're also getting all the CFA curriculum with it included. If you want print books, there's an additional fee for that, but it comes digitally with all the material. So on the Harvard program, you're going to be paying, for all the books, which is an additional cost that you have to consider there. So what is the curriculum of the CFA Charterholder versus a Harvard MBA? Well, the CFA Charterholder is really focused on finance. So all things related to finance. They have what they call a candidate body of knowledge, which covers everything that is in the program. Here is the topics that you will be learning in the CFA program. So there's ethics, which is actually not as intuitive as people think. You think, oh, it's just being a good person. No, it's ethical situations related to being a industry professional in the finance field. Quantitative methods, so this would be essentially statistics. Economics, so big picture using things like GDP, balance of payments, all those economic indicators, and figuring out how does that relate to the investment landscape. Financial statement analysis. This is a fancy word for saying accounting, looking at the financial statements, so balance sheets, income statements, statements of cash flow, and really understanding those on a nitty-gritty, detailed level to be able to make investment decisions. And this is outside looking in, so this isn't managerial accounting, because the CFA designation is focused to invest in companies with what's publicly available. It's not focused on working inside a company and using managerial accounting to figure out how to maybe navigate that firm, right? So that's a different area of accounting. Corporate issuers, so those would be, stocks, right? Equity investments. That is, stocks as well. Fixed income, so all the bond side to instruments out there. Derivatives, so swaps, options, forward rate agreements, all the things that are deriving value from some underlying instrument that could be a bond or a stock or some sort of commodity. Alternative investments, so real estate, right, would be a alternative investment, non-publicly traded real estate, hedge funds, all those areas. And then portfolio management and wealth planning. So taking this all and putting this all together in making, one cohesive investment portfolio that is synergistic. So rather than having one stock, two stocks, and you're not really talking strategy to each other, how do all these stocks come together? How do all these investments come together to get you to where you need to be with that strategy? Now, if we drill into that, we can see basically what I was talking about in a more detailed manner. So this breaks down the ethics section, the quant section, economics, right? So we see econ, financial statement analysis, corporate issuers, so corporate finance essentially, equity investments, fixed income, derivatives, and portfolio management. Now, while this doesn't look like a lot of topics for, the program, considering on average it takes people 4 years to complete the CFA program, and for the Harvard MBA, it's about 2. So why does that take so long? Well, this is actually, so here is the global candidate body of investment knowledge, which breaks all those topics into subtopics to actually see what's really under the hood. And I'm not going to go through this entire document. You can, Google search it. I'll put it in the show notes of global body of investment knowledge. And it's 86 pages of all the stuff that goes into those topics that you can see. So it's very detailed. The curriculum is about like 9,000 pages that they give you from the CFA Institute. So a lot of material. The MBA program, rather than having, just 3 exams, you are broken up into semesters, right? Just like any other college degree. So 2 years. So you have the fall, you have the spring semester, then you have a summer, you have another fall here. Oh, sorry. You have the fall, and then in year 2, you have the spring as well, right? And we can break that down into, so year 1, the required curriculum. So you have finance, financial reporting. So if you notice, it says basic analytical skills. So we're not getting into anything too deep in this class here. So then financial reporting, leadership. So if we're already starting to see a different theme here diverging from the CFA Institute. So there's no leadership type material on the CFA program because it's really focused on just investing, right? So learning about leadership, marketing, right? Another area. Now you can start to see these themes here are starting to diverge, right? Marketing, understanding the art of marketing in business, technology and operations management. So technology on the inside of a corporate firm, inclusion, and then we have, right, business, government, international economy. So here's a little bit of overlay here with economics, right? So we have national income, balance of payments, exchange rate theory, political regimes, international trade, portfolio capital. Now, strategy. You're going to have a little bit of this in the CFA curriculum, but not as much, right? So talking about what would be a good strategy for a corporation to follow, right? Entrepreneurial management. If you want to go out and say, hey, I'm going to hang my own shingle, how are we doing that? Finance as well. So now we're getting into a little more sophistication here. So financial policies within a firm, integrating the many financial decisions faced by firms. So this would be corporate finance, right? So tools of financial analysis, credit market analysis, option pricing, policy choices. So this is more corporate finance, deals and transactions, right? So you'll have this material on the CFA Institute. So leadership, corporate accountability, global immersion, social purpose of a firm, things about, the impact of a firm, right? Not so much the investing of the firm. So now we get into, year 2, and we say, okay, well, there's actually a heavy aspect of elective courses. So you're going to need substantial amount of electives for the program. And so what is the electives that are offered? Well, here is the sheet that shows all the elective courses. And we can see and filter these areas by different areas. So this is account and management, business, government, and international economy. So if we start to look at some of these headlines, we can see a lot of these are different areas of business that are not necessarily focused on investing, like entrepreneurial management. So that is not a focus on investing, right? That's just being in business. So all these sections on entrepreneurship, tons of courses. So we have a finance section here. So here's our finance section, general management and marketing and negotiations, organizational behavior. strategy, technology and operations management. So you can also, just do Control F and Control Find and just see what are some of the overlap or key terms. So if I did a, um, search for marketing, you can just see it's showing up quite a bit. We have 10 places with marketing in it. Let's say economics. Uh, there's some courses in here, right? So we have 2 economic classes that have the word economic in it. So if we put in here accounting, so there's some accounting classes. So risk and opportunities in the era of climate change. So that is not an accounting course. So these are not accounting courses. You can see it's talking about maybe some of the impacts these are having, but these are not accounting courses directly. So if we notice, none of these, well, I shouldn't say none, but a lot of these classes are more geared towards business and not geared towards investing or investment management, as you can kind of see the consistent theme here. Okay, so what does it take to become a CFA charter holder? So how do we become a CFA charter holder? Well, you pass the exams, and there's 3 exams. You achieve qualifying work experience, which is essentially 4 years in the industry. You submit 2 letters of reference, and now you become a charter holder. And to sit for the exams, you need to qualify to sit for them, which is essentially having a bachelor's degree or having enough work experience, which in this section here, if you meet the requirements to sit for the exams. So really, it's pretty low barriers to entry. These are essentially, if you have a degree in any field, any university, you can go ahead and apply for the CFA exams. Now, how are those exams structured? So there's 3 exams, and they are now 4.5 hours. They used to be 6 hours, so they've reduced the time period for those. Multiple choice on level 1 and 2, and then level 3 has a written portion to the exam. So it's really just, sitting for several exams, and they say on average it takes people about 300 hours to complete the exams, when for me, it took me a lot more than 300 hours. Maybe I wasn't a great super efficient, or I don't know why it took me more hours, but they say on average it will take people about 4 years to pass the CFA designation. And here's a weighting of the different areas. So, and then here's some sample questions. Now, how do you get into Harvard? Well, you have to have a 4-year undergrad, GMAT, or GRE. So then you'll apply with the written application, and then, these are the areas that you will need, and then you'll have a formal interview with an interviewee or interviewer to then get accepted into the program. All right. So what's interesting is, in this section here, it talks about, submitting, your GMAT or GRE, but there is no minimum GMAT or GRE to apply. So while Harvard is extremely prestigious, you might think, oh my gosh, you have to have the highest grades to apply to be in Harvard. Well, interesting enough, that isn't necessarily the case. So who is getting into Harvard? Well, they talk about their class profile, and I think this is quite interesting. So they're very focused on diversity. So they're a big believer in, if you are different, you have a higher chance of getting in. Whether that's right or wrong, that's just their approach to things. I can see the argument of saying, hey, if you have different people from different backgrounds. You're going to have different ways of thought. And that is really what they're really going for. And I would say that is really their mission, is they're trying to have different ways of thought. So you see it talks about the different areas of, race, ethnicity. I mean, they're really priding themselves on this, and they're not focusing. You do see here they're not talking about GPAs and, income. They're talking about, how different you are, essentially. I mean, here is a GPA section, so I stand corrected on that. They do talk about it, but it's not so much the focus. So they have those stats, but it isn't the focus. Now, of the applications right here, we see about 1,000 will enroll and 8,000 will apply. So that's about a 10, it's like an 11% acceptance. So that's not terrible. Talks about who they're looking for further. So leadership, analytical aptitude, and engagement in community citizenship. So they want you to make an impact on the community. That is really their focus. They're not focused on saying, hey, who's the best stock analyst? As you can see, this is the reoccurring theme for this school. Now, so what is graduation rate? So I couldn't pull up actual graduation rates for Harvard for the MBA program, but it talks about their graduation rates, and I believe this is their undergrad, 98%, or I would say this is, their graduate program. So this is probably not just the MBA program, or this is their undergrad. I'm not sure, but ultimately it's extremely high, right? So if you're going to Harvard, you're pretty much, you show up, you're going to somehow graduate, which is good or bad, but people are graduating. Now, as we saw, it's hard to get in. There's only about 11% of people getting in. But if you get in, you pretty much are going to graduate. And what's interesting, as we also saw, they specify that your grades is not necessarily the determining factor that gets you in. So it's not saying you're the brightest person and you had a 4.5 GPA and you can say the ABCs backwards and forwards in your sleep while doing matrix multiplication and juggling something. It's just saying, hey, you are whatever the profile they want. Now, the CFA, on the other hand, the CFA program, we saw low barriers to entry. You just have a bachelor's degree and doesn't matter what you are, you sign up and you're in. But the pass rates are low. So these are the pass rates for level 1. So in the 30s, and then in level 2, it was 40, 50%, and level 3, 48%. So really low pass rates on these exams. And let's keep in mind, these pass rates are on the people that have passed the previous level. So 52% so the 38% of the people that passed then went on to take level 2. And of those people, 52% passed. So you can see the rates get pretty slim there. Jobs. So if we look at what the jobs are of a Harvard MBA, you see most people that want to get a job after will get a job, which is great. And we can see the salary. I'll be talking about that a little more in a moment. But we can see breaks it down by consulting is really the major area. So we see consulting, and then we do see about a third of people going into finance. So the right-hand side basically shows a more broad view of the different areas of the industry, and then this is a more micro breakdown. So about a third of people are going into finance, but what industries of finance? So we see investment banking, investment management, hedge funds, private equity, right? And technology, venture capital. So you're seeing all the pre-IPO type scenarios, right? Private equity, venture capital, investment banking, a lot of dealing with you're dealing with non-publicly traded markets. You know, the investment hedge fund space, well, yeah, you might be dealing with publicly traded markets in here, but you're not a lot of mutual fund, portfolio manager, wealth management type jobs. So how does that compare or contrast the CFA designation? Well, if we pull this up, we can see CFA designation, these jobs are very investment focused. Portfolio management, right? Managing an investment portfolio. Research, right? So that could obviously be stocks or bonds or any other area, but you're researching investments. And consulting is much smaller in the CFA pathway than in the Harvard MBA pathway. C-level executives, investment strategy, risk management. We do see this area in wealth management. Not so much so as you might think, because a lot of the wealth managers, they're more client facing, it's more sales role, and CFA designation is much more analytical. So you're not going to see that as much, but you will see that in maybe the high net worth, ultra high net worth space, credit analysis, right? This is a area or career field many people don't think about, but is really, important in running, capital markets. And then we have others, right, towards the bottom there. But really, you can see all these jobs are really focused on the investment world, right? There's no big tech section as there was on the Harvard MBA side. So what is the pay of a CFA charter holder? So according to the CFA designation website, it is 126,000 plus bonus of being 177,000. And so actually when you become a CFA charter holder or a member of the institute, there's a compensation study that unfortunately I cannot provide because per the CFA Institute, there's a disclosure saying it can't be shared without authorization, but it's very, very detailed. You can segment income by geographic location, how long somebody's been in their career path. So if you're a junior person versus a senior person, the size of the companies, so smaller companies, larger companies. There's a lot of ways to slice and dice the data for figuring out your role on estimating your salary. And I can tell you, I would say this is kind of a low number that they're reporting, because when I slice and dice the data to be relevant to what was kind of relevant to the region of, the West Coast or the United States, it was $20,000-$30,000 more for this on the compensation. So it was higher. But how does that compare to Harvard? So with Harvard, we see the base salary being, 175,000 plus that performance bonus of 40,000. So Harvard is reporting 215,000 essentially, and the CFA Institute is reporting 177,000. So you say, wow, that's a big, difference. But like I said, when I ran the numbers, it was north of 200,000 for all in, base plus performance on the USA, kind of taking out some filters. Now, these numbers, and that's what's really important about this, is these numbers, I'd say, you have to really take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it also depends the region, right? So as we see, there's a lot of people working East Coast where maybe you have higher tax rates, higher cost of living. Well, yeah, hopefully you are getting paid more than you would be if you were in a foreign country that has a lower median or on a different state where the cost of living is much lower. So while this is a really important topic on salary, because that's what people are looking at, I'd say this is definitely a little misleading on comparing the two and just saying, hey, that's 175,000 versus the CFA number being 177,000 for all in, because you really have to look at what specific field. I don't think the pay gap is as wide as this is really showing if you're in the same job doing the same thing. So, what are some of the perks of having a CFA designation? Well, one of the big things is waivers, right? So, nobody knows, or almost nobody's going to know from friends or family what the CFA designation is. It is not a household name unless you're really in the finance world. If you go somewhere, people aren't going to know. People are going to know what the Harvard designation is, right? CFA designation, people don't know. But in the industry, people know. There are lots of waivers and different things around the globe where you can bypass that by having a CFA designation. So in America, for example, you don't have to test for a Series 65. If you want to become a CFP later, you can bypass a lot of the sections on the CFP and go straight to a capstone course. If you want the CMT designation, you can, I believe, skip level 1. The Kaya designation, I believe you can still skip level 1 on that. A lot of these other designations, it opens you up to a lot of certifications, designations that you kind of get the expedited road by doing the CFA designation. Now, Harvard on the other end, right? It's well known. It's a name everyone's gonna know, right? CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, Michael Bloomberg, right? These are names that household names. You say you went to Harvard, people are gonna know, right? Everyone's gonna know. That is one of the big benefits. So where are these places going in the future? I can say, the CFA designation is having some real changes, and one of the big changes is the specialized pathway, which is coming in 2024. And what that is there's 3 sections. So there's a private wealth area, there's a private market area. That are the 2 areas, and then there'll be a portfolio management as the 3rd option. And so the private markets, this is really interesting because as we saw, one of the big competitive things about the Harvard MBA was that there was all those jobs within the private market space, right? Private equity, venture capital, investment banking. So you have all those jobs that you were not having in the, it's kind of harder to get into with the CFA designation because there isn't as much of a focus on that. But now the CFA designation is going to have a focus for that. So what then becomes the distinction of getting those jobs? I'm just going to say bluntly, connections. CFA designation, you can enroll in your local society, which is really cool. I've gotten a lot of value out of being involved in my local society. It's great. You have this cohort. It's essentially like your alumni. Now, the Harvard Business School, it's going to be probably different if you go and apply for a job and you say, hey, I went to Harvard. Well, that's going to have a really much more lasting impact if the private equity partner also went to Harvard, right? Your odds are just a lot higher of getting that position. Now, the CFA Institute does do a comparison on their website that kind of shows what I just went through on saying, hey, what are the differences? Now, they do kind of are more general because they just talk about an MBA rather than saying, hey, Harvard MBA. They're just talking about one of them, just they're talking about a generalization, but you can see more or less what I talked about. So the cost, this number was much higher for Harvard recognition. Um, they're kind of upselling it on the Institute website, saying, hey, it's preferred at, all these investment positions, which is true. Now, if you have an MBA from Harvard, right, people are going to know where that is, and the focus, right? This is what we saw, right? When we looked at the curriculum, totally different focus. You're an expert in an area rather than just saying you're learning broad business concepts. Pass rate, this is one of the things to really consider as you decide on the two, of saying you want to really just, maybe it's hard to get in, but once you're in, you kind of know and can plan your life and say, I'm going to have this done. There's a lot of people that will start the CFA designation that end up dropping out. That's one of the things to consider. They start it, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to do this, and then a year, 2 years later, they fail enough times, they say, I'm out of this. I mean, you see the pass rates compared to, being a CPA or CFP, much lower. And there's just much less people. And so you see here, this now talks about average salary being 180,000. So, like I said, the CFA Institute, they have several numbers, and they have a study on all of this that kind of breaks it all down with what job you have. So I don't know how they're coming up with this 180,000 versus on their one of the other pages they're showing the 177 with the all in, because that just says salary, not salary plus bonus. So hopefully all this gives you a little bit more ammunition on deciding what you want to do in your pathway of saying you want a Harvard MBA or CFA design.